What would change in the world if you, me, and everyone choose to feed the wolf of possibilities instead of the one of doubt, distrust, and despair? The way I see it, our point of view creates reality, not the other way around. Somewhere deep within, I think we know that. In this podcast, I am daring you to claim this remarkable superpower. Join us and be inspired by trackers, explorers, and finders of possibilities from the multiverse of hope. Welcome to the podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities, with your host, Katarina.
So, hello, Simone, and hello, everyone, to this episode of Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities. And today we're exploring the possibilities of leading without leaning into structures. So, as our guide, I've invited my friend and colleague, Simone Milasas, who is the author of the book, Joy of Business. She runs several businesses herself and also works as a leadership and business facilitator in her spare time. So welcome, Simone.
Thank you, Katarina. Thank you for having me here.
Again, you're a returning guest.
Yes. How did I get so lucky?
Yeah. How did you get so lucky? Yes. How did I get so lucky to have you on here? So let's start with, what is a leader? Like, what would you say a leader is, since that's what we're diving into, leadership?
Yeah. Well, I think a leader is many things, but I think a leader is when you have the trust in yourself, which with that trust in yourself comes so many different elements, which I can talk about. It's like that vulnerability, that trust that you have of yourself to know that what you're choosing, like what you're asking for and what you're choosing, and you're heading in that direction. But here's the thing. I think when you're heading in the direction of what it is that you desire, what it is that you request, even just starting with knowing what it is that you desire and request, you've also got to be able to pivot. You've also got to be able to at any moment just go, you know what? Actually, no, let's head over here, or let's head over here, or let's ask this person, or let's let this go, or let's take this on. It's like forever changing. It's been so malleable, and trusting you and trusting the universe, which is something that I've been looking at lately and playing with.
Well, can you talk, what is pivoting for us non-English speaking people around the world?
Did you ever play netball?
Netball? You mean like handball or like volleyball or something like that?
No, I mean netball. So you obviously never played netball.
No.
Okay. So pivot is when you're going in one direction and then you go, oh, I'm changing directions. So you pivot. You're literally changing the trajectory of your life. Okay. So say if you're in a business and you're asking for something that you'd like in a business, and you're requesting, and you're like, okay, you wake up in the morning and you're all enthused and you're like, where's my energy required today? You've got this enthusiasm, you've got this joy, and you're asking questions, and you're choosing and you're choosing and you're choosing and you're choosing. And then all of a sudden there's this crunch, right? And it's like this funky energy. How many times do you go, no, this is what I'm choosing, and you keep heading in that direction? That's when you lose the skills of a leader. Because you keep heading in the same direction that you decided you were going to head in yesterday or last year or 10 years ago, rather than be in question and acknowledge, hang on, the energy's gone a little funky here. What's up? What's happening? Did something change? Should I pivot and do something different? So you make a different choice. Like recently, there's a building that behind me, and one of the apartments was for sale, and I put an offer in to buy this apartment. And I felt so weird. It was just like, it was really crunchy in my world. And eventually I was almost like they were printing the contracts. And I pulled out and I went, no, I'm not doing this, because a friend of mine said, what are you doing it for? And I realized I was trying to fulfill a dream that I had with my ex from 15 years ago. So if I kept trying to head in that direction, then you keep doing that and you're sort of creating this very limited, finite life, rather than pivoting, changing the trajectory and going, no, that dream is no longer, that dream, that agenda is no longer relevant. I'm choosing something different. Okay, what else am I choosing now? What different possibility is available?
Well, and the interesting part of that is, if you are not willing to pivot, which I now am going to claim as a new word that I'm going to use, then you can't receive anything that doesn't fit with whatever direction you decided you're going, right?
No, because you've already got your head down. Like, and here's the thing, Kat. It's like, how many people go, oh, being strong-willed, put your head down and just keep charging and just keep going. That's a leader. No, it's not. A leader is somebody who's willing to go, you know what? I totally screwed up. We're going in the wrong direction. Let's go over here. You know, we made a wrong turn. You know, I looked at the map the other way around. Okay, let's go. A leader is someone who can perceive an energy that is so much bigger than what most people are willing to perceive, and they head for that. But for me, the exploration of heading there is that joy and that place of nobody might even hear you. Okay. And you've also got to be willing for that as a leader. Nobody might be able to hear you, or one person can hear something small, and then you expect everybody to jump on the same boat, but they're not jumping on the same boat. So then you keep sailing, you keep moving forward, you keep moving forward. Oh, okay. A good, you know, sailing when you tack.
Yeah.
That's
that
pivoting. That's
Yeah.
pivoting. That's pivoting.
Ah,
Tacking.
okay. Well, so then if we look at this, like the whole, what you're describing as a leader, so what then is a structure, and what is it that makes so many companies and so many leaders like structures?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that it's becomes comfortable. It's something that's known. You know what to expect, you know, the downfalls, you know, the failures. Unfortunately, so many people get attracted to failures. Success is probably one of the most, you know, intimidating things in the world, because you don't yet know that energy, or you have not stepped into that. Like, you can have a success today, and then that becomes your, you know, your new normal. And then you can just be complacent and be with this, or you can reach further into a success that you have not yet chosen, which of course is going to take you into a place of maybe being a little uncomfortable or intimidated by that. But what are you going to choose? To me, a leader is always going to keep moving forward, right? So a lot of people will implement something in the workplace and go, isn't this fabulous? This is great. Okay, this worked today. This is the way we do it. Anytime you hear someone go, this is the way we do it, or even, oh, we tried that and that doesn't work. That's the same thing. That's a structure.
Right.
Because you've already decided something, and that you've decided it either works or it doesn't work, rather than, and you can simply like put your attention on any area of your business and go, okay, have I created a structure here? You know, and how many structures have I created? And to change them, to ask, okay, what system of possibility could I choose? Because then it takes you, a system is malleable. A system is about being in question. So you may run a certain way for quite some time. Like, if you look at Access Consciousness, you know, for years, I mean, gosh, I've been working with Gary and Dane in Access for 23 years. There's so much that's changed. And for quite some time, we were working from 3 different companies, like worldwide. And we'd created a lot of systems that worked. And then as we got bigger, a lot of people really implemented them to be the structure. No, this is not that's not the way we do it. This is the way we do it. It must go through this channel. It must do this. It must. Like, and you know it, because when that energy you go, oh, really? How boring. Like, there's no creativity involved anymore in a structure, because there is no question. And when you question, there's creativity. So then when we started working during all the, you know, the COVID craziness, we started working like in a 24-hour clock rather than 3 different time periods, you know. That broke apart so many of the structures that we'd created, and everyone was like, what do we do now? And we were in question. But then we got so complacent with it and started to create structures within that 24-hour clock. And then when we were allowed to travel, it was sort of like this chaos that is not quite allowed. Because when there is chaos, if you let chaos reign and you encourage chaos, that's different, because you'll wake up and be like, whoa, where's my energy required today? And reach into something different and go, who do I need to talk to? What's happening over here? What's happening here? Oh, hang on. Maybe I don't need to control this. I don't need to force this. I don't need to look for a conclusion or a result, etc. But I get a lot of the times what happened is chaos came down and everyone went, shit, try and hang on to chaos and let's create a structure so we know what the fuck is going on, rather than what if we didn't? What if we threw everything up in the air and went, where's this all going to land?
Well, and it's funny because when you're talking, there were so many questions that showed up in my head as you were talking, but one of them was, so, structures seemingly create comfort. Like that's what you're like, we seem to be drawn to them to create comfort. But at the same time, you also mentioned bored. And I would say for me, one of my best indicators that there's a structure is that I get bored. I lose the whole interest really in getting in there and creating. So can you talk a little bit more about that, like the comfort / boredom?
Well, what if it was like this faux comfort, like a fake comfort?
Right.
It's sort of like you get up and you're like, I was talking to someone today, a friend of mine, and he said to me, can you ask me some questions? And I said, sure, what's up? And he has been complaining about money for quite some time and been unhappy. And it's been obvious, right? And he's starting to be joyful and starting to be happy. And he's also starting to have more money. And he said, but what I'm noticing is, he said, I have this resistance to invoicing for certain jobs. Like if I had even more money, what would show up? And I was like, so what would show up? And the thing that we sort of got to after a few questions and looking at this was, he was so comfortable in his complaining and so comfortable in his no joy and comfortable in his struggle. So how many of you have a structure that is in that comfort zone of that, of a limitation? So you're actually comfortable with your limitations rather than you went, whoa, if I actually started moving into this and I never had to hustle to get my rent and I never had to, stress about that, that's a new energy. That's not a comfort. That's something different. And it's like, what if you could explore that? Because we go, oh, comfortable. Even comfort food. Look at comfort food. Everyone goes, oh, it's comfort food. And it's like, yeah, but is it nurturing food? It's like, it's something It's like, that's like, family might be comforting, but are they nurturing? Ask another question.
Oh, that's brilliant. So another thing I wanted to go back to that's connected to this, because you mentioned it a few times with chaos. And I think sometimes people don't really get the difference between chaos and havoc. So they confuse those two. So could you just kind of dive into what is the difference? Because there's a huge difference in my sense between those two.
So, if you, let's look at in business world. Okay. So if you look at it in the business world and you have a whole bunch of people who are working together, right? And now somebody comes in and they're complaining, maybe gaslighting, throwing different things down, always never sort of going with what works, etc. They're always like, no, let's not do this. And they're sort of arguing or have this fight in their world, etc. And some people have misidentified that and said it's, like this person is chaotic, but are they creating chaos or are they creating havoc, right? So when someone creates havoc, it's usually a destruction. When there is chaos involved, and somebody can walk in and just be absolute complete chaos, right? But that chaos creates. So that's probably the best way I would look at it. And if there's an energy and you're unsure, go, okay, is this chaos or is this havoc? Is this creating or is this destroying? Because havoc will create the structure of destruction, whereas chaos, through question, through like malleable, being able to pivot, being able to tack, all of that, chaos will create this place of the unexpected. They're like, whoa, we didn't look at that. And it's like, and you start seeing everything and perceiving everything from totally different eyes.
Well, it's interesting too, because when you were talking, I was looking at, you can't really relax into havoc, but you can relax into chaos.
Absolutely. You can relax into, yeah. Well, havoc's sort of like, what are you holding on to, get your grip. But here's the thing, and you can't relax into havoc because there's so much structure there that there's really not anywhere to move. You're sort of stuck. Right. Whereas you relax into chaos and it's like, you know what? I don't know, maybe you're running late for something, right? And you just go, what will be, will be. I'm a wizard. I'm going to arrive when I'm meant to arrive, The judgment creates havoc. And it's like, whereas the no judgment will create chaos.
Yeah. And the havoc in that situation is when you try to force everything literally to get on time. And then on the way, you will create even more hurdles. We all know that. Like once we
Well,
start forcing something, we create the havoc instead of,
yeah, and you're even creating havoc within your body. Like you'll
yeah.
know when you get like that stress, or you're like, oh my God, I'm running late.
Mm.
And then all the molecules in your body go, "Argh," and you're like, oh my God, they're like, what are we stressed about? You know, and it's creating havoc in your body. And then how many people get sick or ill or hurt themselves from that, rather than the
Mm.
chaos of like, you know what? I'm late. What's right about this I'm not getting? What awareness am I gaining with this choice? You know,
Mm.
what am I choosing with this? And then you arrive. And it's always amazing to me if you have that calmness, because you can have calmness with chaos, of how it's always this, it's beneficial not just to you, but it also to others.
Mm. Well, one of the things that, like when we talk about structures that come up, is hierarchies within companies and within businesses. And so, could you talk a little bit about how leaders can be created without a structured hierarchy? Like, how does that work
Hmm.
in a company?
You know, I think you need to change it all the time. And I think you need to be in question all the time. That's very key.
Mm.
And I mean, I was just talking to Dane today, and he was saying how he changed up a lot of his gaggle, which gaggle, if you guys don't know, it's like the people that we work with, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit with this. And I changed mine up recently based on what you've been mentioned before, Kat. I was bored, and I was like, okay, I'm bored. And I wasn't bored with the people I work with. I was bored with the structure. So for me personally, and I think you need to look at what works for you, because for me personally, I realized, say I've got 20 ships, okay, which is 20 projects, and I've got 20 projects, and I'm on each of those ships. I was expecting every single person that I work with to be on every ship at the helm. Let's go forward. And I realized there was an expectation, there was a projection, there was a force in it, there was a control in it, which also leads to disappointment. It leads to frustration. It leads to like an anxiety in all around all these sort of things. And I went, okay, what else is possible here? And I really sat with this, and I went, okay, I don't desire to have, we call it a koi, a conglomeration of idiots, like heading in the same direction. But I went, basically a team. Okay. And I was like, I don't think I desire a team anymore, you know? And I was like, what if everyone was fired? What would we choose? And then I went, oh, hang on a second. Let's look at all these different ships. So say, for example, my podcast, right? That's a
Mm.
ship. There's people that are on that ship, man, they just do their job. There's a flow in that just goes and goes and goes, right? It's like that hardly needs any input from me, except obviously the podcast. It's like they know what they're doing, and they've got that, right? And then there was these other things, and then I went, oh, what if I actually hired people for certain jobs? So recently I hired Graham Crossgrove for anything I do with business. So it's like any of the Joy business stuff, and so he's the mover on that. And so I said, let's do this for 6 months and see how this works out. So he's sort of moving these ships over here, but he's not on all that. He's not on the podcast ship. He's so he can be over here, right? So I started to break all this up, and I said, I don't actually desire to have a weekly meeting anymore. I was like so bored with coming into this weekly meeting at my 6 a.m. I felt like all I was doing was talking while everyone just looked at me, even though no matter what I'd say, okay, what are you aware of with this? It was like, you know, pushing shit uphill, as they say, or pushing a rock up a hill. So we kiboshed a whole lot of things, and it was like, you know, no more meetings. If you want to meet up, have a huddle, because I find when I go, oh, I need to talk to this one and this one, you know, and so we have a huddle, and then it might be 5 minutes, it might be 30 minutes, but then stuff gets done, right? It's not just like talking about everything. So this has started to work, right? And I was talking to Dane about it, and then he said to me today, he said, we tried to do this with his coin. He said, it didn't really work out. And he said, so I've brought it down to this, you know, this sort of core group, which he's got some amazing people in there, you know, to drive all of this. And he said, and it seems to be working. And we both said, and I said, yeah, for this 10 seconds. Like the way I'm choosing to work with the people I work with, and the way Dane's choosing to work with the people he works with, is different. It is never going to be the same, because Dane and I are totally different in the way we get involved. Our enthusiasm is similar like that, but it's different. And I said, for this 10 seconds. And I'm even noticing with the people I work with at the moment, in the last 48 hours, I was like, what is this energy? Because I started to get a little bored. And I'm like, oh, I wonder who else is bored. So we're having a meeting tomorrow night. And I'm interested to see what shows up. Like, we have a little agenda, like a little meaty thing about what we want to talk about. And then, but really to ask them questions. Hey, is this working for you? And it's like, we changed up a whole lot of things of who was leading certain things and then going over here. And, you know, it's really about being a question and the willingness to create that chaos.
Well, so can I ask about, there's sometimes in companies, especially, I think especially companies that work on like ideas and, you know, movement in the world, probably all companies really, there is sometimes an energy of proving, like an energy of proving, and by, for example, moving somewhere in the hierarchy that seemingly is there's a success. So can you talk about proving and what kind of structures that kind of fits into?
Yeah, I don't really give proving that much energy. So when someone's trying to prove something, I don't pay it much energy. You know, it's like a kid that's screaming and kicking and screaming, and you're like, dude, you can kick and scream all you want, but you're not getting the candy. You know, so look, I spent a long time ago, I did used to function from proving, and I think a lot of people that we work with have gone through the proving stage, and it's not a fun stage. It's pretty boring. It's so limited. So for me personally, and I would recommend if you're listening to this and you go, am I proving or not? Every time you open your mouth, go, am I trying to prove something, you know, with what I'm saying or what I'm sharing, especially if you're female, like, you know, what am I trying to prove with this choice? Because, and let's go back to the leadership.
Yeah.
The leadership never has to prove. So you don't have to be the boss of a company or, you know, the one that's out on the, you know, that's out doing the seminars, etc. Like someone I worked with recently was talking about how they wanted to be seen. And I had a really serious chat. It sounds so significant, but I was like, hey, if you want to be seen, if you want to be out there, go facilitate, go get out there, go do your podcast, go do this. Because if that's what you want to do, you got to choose it, man. It's like, that's your, you know, head in that direction. You might not be someone who is, you know, loves working on the back end and loves dotting I's and crossing T's. If you're not, don't choose it. Please change what you are currently choosing if it doesn't work for you. That's a leader in your own life. And I think that's really imperative, Kat, so that you have that joy in your world too.
Well, you said it. Now you said it in kind of passing where you said that's being a leader, not having to prove.
Yeah.
So when you changed this for you, was that also part of your path to becoming a leader?
Yeah. And look, I think there's going to be different phases that you go through. And I would say, look, there's so many reasons and justifications why people prove. And there's this energy of like, what happens if I get fired? I better prove that I'm worth it or prove my value. It's like, in truth, you're the one you are. And it sounds like a cheesy thing to say, but until you get it, you don't really get it, that you have to know that you have value. The one person who has to know that you have value is you. You have nothing else is worth it. And I would highly recommend a tool that I've used over and over again is the 5 elements of intimacy. So if you can have those 5 elements of intimacy with you, gratitude, trust, honor, allowance, and vulnerability, you have you. And then you can start to play with others in a much bigger way. And then you can start to lead something different. But if you are looking to prove your existence to anybody else, it's like you're just scratching at the wall. It's really not going to create what you think it's going to create. So for me, when I started asking that question, what am I trying to prove with this choice, etc., and I would pock and pot it. And then now it's so obvious when someone's trying to prove something, and it's really boring because it's really obvious, but you're just like, okay. But like I said, I don't pay it that much attention. So funnily enough, I don't get that many people on my team or gaggle or coy, whatever you want to call it, use that proving energy very much because it doesn't work with me. You know, I'm like, yeah.
I think it's brilliant because in the way what you're saying is once you really know the value of you, once you start using the 5 elements of intimacy, that is really when you also are able to start function outside the structures, because
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
required. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have I know we're run towards the end here, but I have this question. So we sometimes talk about the difference between politicians and statesmen.
Mhm.
So if you looked at leadership and structure and the difference between politicians and statesmen, how would you describe that?
So for me, a politician is looking at what they can do as a quick fix in their term that most countries in that they're in, right? And it's like what, the structured reality, the proving energy, big time. Like, so many leaders, they're not leaders, they're politicians, are coming from that proving energy, and they're not truly looking at the bigger picture. And for me, a statesman is more looking at it's really looking at the systems of possibilities. And for me, a statesman is somebody who comes along and is not necessarily looking at what the action that they take today that's going to be this immediate accolade. What if what you choose today, it shows up, the benefit of that shows up in 100 years or 50 years or 500 years time? Because for me, Kat, we've got to start looking at the planet and how we be with it. And we should be leaving this planet way better than what we found it. Like if you have even one plot of land, create it to be greater than when you came upon it. And that's how I think a leader of a country should be. When they come in and they lead the country, it's like, lead it to be greater than what you came upon it, and whatever that takes. Like, I am horrified at the moment with some of the stuff that's happening in Australia. We're one of the countries in the world that has the greatest amount of natural resources.
Yeah.
We keep pretending that we're like this second world country and that we can't be this leader in the world because, I don't know, we've got less people. Hey, that's a bonus, We're as big as America with 26 million people. And we are selling off our natural resources to the world at a pittance of what any other country in the world that has natural resources is doing. We must have some like ridiculous, deals on the side that where somebody is winning out, which I'm probably sure it's China, is winning out for the deals on the side rather than looking at the future of this country and what that could be for here. And I think politicians look for the deals that they can have on the side rather than what can they give to, the land here. Can I add, we're doing a class next year in Uluru, right, which is the middle of Australia, Big Red Rock. A lot of people talk about that is one of the places of the source of creation. And I spoke to Gary Douglas yesterday, the founder of Access Consciousness. And the class that we're going to be doing, it'll be myself, Gary, and Dane, is called Being the Source. And he said to me, we're doing this for Australia. I said, what do you mean? And he said, we're doing this for Australia and hopefully to contribute to like Australia, the land, everything, knowing that they can be the source, that there is something much bigger as a future that is possible. And I was just like, this is brilliant.
And it's beautiful. And it actually leads back to the very beginning. We were talking about pivoting, or we were talking about pivoting, and what you describe as like the politicians with kind of deals on the side and the quick fixes to get elected the next period, and the difference between a statesman who look at this much longer time perspective, but also a much bigger perspective where they are willing to pivot and like relax into chaos and possibility.
Yeah.
So
relax, actually, truly relax. I mean, Australia should be holding on to their natural resources, not selling them off to the first person who asks.
So that's a final thing. Like, what would it be like if the world was willing to actually give up even more of the structure that we're currently functioning from?
And control. Kat, I said to Dane today too, I've started running the out of control process. Can I just do it once?
Yes, please.
So what would happen if you're out of control, out of definition, out of form, structure, significance, out of linearities, out of concentricities, and out of limitations with your life? Everything that is times a godzillion, we destroy and uncreate it.
It's one of my favorite clearings.
Shorts, boys, perverts, embryons. I said to Dane, I've just started running it again. I think I'm actually running it for the first time.
So many layers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's time to get really out of control and start trusting yourself, which is a leader. And in that, trusting the universe, man. Universe has got our back. The universe is going to deliver to you what is required. And you got to choose it.
Thank you. I think that is the perfect place to end. Thank you so much, Simone. And what else is possible? And we'll add the link to the class next year in Australia under this podcast. So if you're interested, you can take the prereqs and you can see if you want to join us live or online, right?
Live or online. But please come to the Australian desert. Oh my God, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
It is. It is. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast, Feeding the Wolf of Possibilities. I hope you have more space in your world now. If you would like to listen to earlier episodes, share with other people, or subscribe, please go to Spotify, iTunes, or visit KatarinaValentin.com/wolf.